So we've looked at trying to crack passwords against network services across a network. Now, how about if we're right there in Windows? Maybe we managed to compromise a Windows machine, either remotely or locally right there. And we're going to grab either the password file, the SAM usually, or we're going to dump password hashes from memory. So password cracking in Windows. Windows passwords will of course be used to authenticate not only users, but services and other computers. And apps also often require passwords from users. Or the app itself needs to log on, so there's a password and a username for the app itself. Passwords, of course, can be stored in clear text, but not in Windows. In Windows, they will be stored as a hashed value. If little apps have their own little password files, they may be clear text. I hope not, but it's possible. There are other authentication methods that you could try to target, and we'll talk about some of these a little later. You could go after certificates and keys. You could go after what we call Kerberos tickets. That's when you log on to a domain. Or you could go after LSA secrets. LSA secrets are basically little stored passwords that the operating system sort of keeps in its back pocket. The usernames, however, are stored in the Security Account Manager, the SAM file. They are stored as either an LM, LAN Manager, or NTLM, NT-LAN Manager, hash. Very often they're stored in both formats. To protect the SAM, there's actually another key at boot up called the sys key. It's a key that encrypts the SAM, which encrypts these hashes, which are encrypted passwords. However, there are tools to bypass sys key and go straight after the SAM, or to grab sys key and still go after the SAM and decrypt it. But these are approaches we can use. And you don't have to manually do them per se, but you need to make sure you have tools that can do these. So your options for cracking Windows. You could either brute force a network service, typically like the logon service. You could dump credentials from memory if you have already compromised the box. Dump the LSA secrets, dump the user hashes, dump security tokens. A token is simply just a little thing that's attached to your session. When you log in, your username and password are tested, and then your user ID, security ID, SID, and any adminish privilege rights that you have, they call them rights, are attached to everything you do in what's called a token. So the token is associated with your session, and it identifies you. So you don't have to be authenticated again and again and again. And we've talked about tokens when we talked about web servers and web services. So you could grab all of these things. And even sometimes in memory, there will even be copies of old passwords, because Windows allows the storage of old passwords as well as the current password. You grab all these things, and you're not trying to connect across a network to try usernames and passwords. It's not a network brute force. You just grab these and you take these quietly offline to your own machine, and you run a cracking program against that list. Because when you do that, you're not going to lock anybody out, and you just keep on cracking until you get it. You can also, of course, extract the syskey boot key, which protects the SAM. And you can dump any locally cached login information. So these are all ways of approaching Windows cracking. So how do you do this? Well, you could also just be in a buffer overflow that allows remote code execution. You could, if you don't dump the hashes, just create a new account, or use a hash dump to create a new account, or an Active Directory Kerberos ticket. Kerberos is just the login protocol for Active Directory. You could also just put a keylogger on, which we'll talk about in a bit, or you can bribe someone with a chocolate bar and social engineer them. Or you could boot into another operating system and just find the physical storage on the hard drive where the passwords are stored and just overwrite it so that the passwords are all blank. I mean, these are all options if you don't do traditional cracking. So those are the methodologies we can use to attack Windows passwords.